I'm watching the rise. And I wouldn't say I'm shocked, cause I'm hardly surprised. This one's for the ride. This one's for who knew I'd make it, just needed some time. This one's for my wife. Could've left 1,000 times just to by my side. This one's for the grind. I knew it would.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Randy Kaye, and I'm the host of the Caught Up podcast. Today we have the founder of Triple Crown Sports, David King. Dave, it's always great to see you. Thanks for taking the time to get caught up.
Glad to be here, Randy.
Thank you. How are things up in Fort Collins right now?
Well, we've changed. My son is obviously running Triple Crown Sports as CEO, and my daughter is the head of the measurement company, CSE,
Yep.
and I'm a project-based guy. So you name the project, I'm on it.
Got it. How about the TC family? How's everyone doing? The Krista Crawfords of the world and your whole director group.
Well, our fast pitch division is the largest part of our company. There's close to 80 employees here between the entities, and the fast pitch is the largest and probably the most critical of long-term focus and market position. And so when you take that division and look at the Krista Crawfords and the Stephs and the Alleys that are in there, that you guys know real well on the West Coast, and then the Katrinas and the Carries and the people on the East Coast that Carrie does a lot of work there, Rivera, they are really well positioned in the marketplace. Meaning, I would say they have the ear of the teams.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about why back in 1982 you decided to start this journey. I looked you up a little bit, and I didn't know this about you, but it says you studied at Harvard.
Well, that's a tweener. So, meaning in the middle
Okay.
of my career, I went back to school because I wasn't a very good CEO. And
Gotcha.
literally, I was good at running events, and I was good with teams and people, and good at building product. But the running the company part, I wasn't good at. And I wasn't trained to be. I was still kind of the benevolent, give everything to the teams. And I really financially struggled to put a model together. And I had to go back and figure out where the models were and what happened. So the 82 start was a launch on the passion of eventing. And then going back to school in 2006 at age 50 was a necessity.
Gotcha. And was that because things were, because I look at what you guys do, and one of the things that I took out of it is you want to run better events. You want it to be more family, more fun. I think the word you used was you wanted events that rocked, right? Is that because in order to put all those things together, there has to be a plan, and I'm sure there's a business plan for every single piece that goes into that? Is that what you meant by running it?
Well, I think
an event or a company?
the running the events, I was hard pressed to not be really, really good at seeing what an event needed to do and who the client was and what they wanted. But when you start running a company, you have people that count on you for their careers and their lives, and you have investments in infrastructure and software and processes and systems. And in order to do that, other than do it on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet, you have to be able to have capital that flows. And I went 17 years without breaking even, which
Wow.
is, I don't know if there's a fine line between determination and stupidity. And, my partner that started with me is an old cowboy, and so he always has a poem or a story to tell. And he believes that, that determination is just when stubbornness works. And, so he saw that I wasn't going to quit on it. And, he lasted with me for 5 years, 82 through 87. We ran the local events, and then we started nationally, and he went again with me from 87 through about 93, and he said, I can't do this. I mean, I need to be outside. I can't be behind a screen. I can't be on a phone. And he made the move to Montana, and I helped him get started in the hunt and fishing business and outfitting. And he's had a tremendous career up there. And he just resigned from our board after 40 plus years on our board of directors. So he
Oh
was a
wow.
great contributor in the evolution. But I think there's a lot of people in softball that don't want to say they're in the business of softball. And I tell our staff all the time, I said, proudest thing is I've committed my career to it. And so anybody wants to stand in a room and shoot holes at me and say, well, you put your career in it and everything you got to make it work for the customer. You got to work for your hosts, your partners, and you got to make it work for your staff. And at the end of the day, it's got to work for you too. So being a career person, I never apologize to people for being a professional, ever.
Yeah. When you talk about you never broke even, does that mean you were were you in the red or
Well, we were in the
what you,
red for probably 12 years where we just kept one step ahead of the machine. We'd run more events.
yeah,
We'd sign up more teams. We would cut costs and we'd go again, or I'd get the staff to work for, we had people working for trade out on the road, meaning
yeah,
they'd go on the road, but they had to trade out their hotels and they had to trade out their meals to eat. So there's no
yep,
per diems. And I traded out the airline tickets with what was then Continental Airlines, which didn't make it, and we did. So but there wasn't any wages worth having. I had some amazing people here in those years that aren't here because they just couldn't support their family.
yeah.
The passion just didn't make it to the dinner table.
It's kind of that. I mean, that reminds me of what we do as coaches as well. I mean, I always tell everybody, in order to do this at the level that I want to do it at, or the people that I know do it at, it feels like this has to be a full time thing or close to it, or you better be, far along in your life to be able to be financially stable enough to do this. But that it kind of feels that way here in the travel ball world too. That you're kind of just breaking even, or you're just getting, like you said, you're staying one step ahead of the
I
next
meet a lot of
event.
people that are on their 17th year and look at me and
Yeah,
say, "How did you go past it?" And I said, "Well, I would tell you, I didn't see the business principles, and I was afraid to say them out loud. That a 4, 5, 6% margin is not apologetic. You got to go get one, and you should target a 10% margin, and that way, in the 10% margin, you can pay the IRS their third and reinvest a third and have a third for yourself." And so
yeah,
that's not, and it took years to get to 6. And so is that determination or stubbornness? But I don't know. When I look up and say I never cut it on the side of the event and the customer. I mean, and the things that we wanted to make and build were things that gave you memories that you took home and said, I got to be here. And they were of joy and hard competition, hard competition. I wanted everybody to line up somebody just the same that wanted a piece of them. And then I wanted grandeur. I wanted things that people would go, wow, that's a neat moment. And then one of the probably the most key ingredients, I wanted your family to feel like it was worth being there, so that they shared
yeah,
the memories, the joy, the competition, and the grandeur. So getting a group of people that wanted to build events like that, that's a hard assignment. Because I used to say, a coach will have a hard transition to the second floor here. First floor is where we coach our team out the back, and the second floor is where we run our business. And up here, there's 80 people, and this is an accountability world, meaning the event business in its very nature. I have people walk in and say, well, I'm going to get around to it. Well, the event starts on Saturday, the 23rd. And so it will start you and it will finish you. And what you don't have done will be exposed. So we're not in that world where you can maybe get something done. This happens when it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the show has to go on, and that communication piece and the planning. I mean, I'm getting stuff from you guys in, for these big events in the summer in January, and I'm going, guys, I just barely turned the page on the year, and I'm just trying to make it through January to high school, and so I can only imagine, what it takes to do that. Tell me what Triple Crown Sports means to you since its incorporation in 1997.
If you define who you are, you got to step back and say what you are. Um, and so the what that I wanted was a platform to build stuff and build sports events from. And so I wanted a platform. So I explain to people all the time is if you can find your platform, that's near your passion, that's an approach that you can have a career in, a platform. You can do a lot of things from that platform. And an example is building the measurement company from the platform of Triple Crown, meaning it allowed me to explore an anomaly that's been bothering me since I started coaching at 18, which is how do we get these kids the right fit? They all want an answer, and they all envision us to be godlike creatures because we know the Pope and we know
Right.
the angels, and we can get them a scholarship. And the answer is that group is so small of our kids that the rest of the kids, we got to get them on the right plane and land them in the right airport so they're not flying a Piper Cub into Atlanta Hartsfield and saying, where's my coach, where's my team? And that model always bothered me. So the platform of Triple Crown allowed me to explore this. Is there a better way through data and video to help parents come with the reality we're not going to Disney World? We're not going to
Right.
play for Arizona. We're going to play
Right.
for College of Eastern Arizona, and we're going to love it. And to get them to accept that sooner with data. And so the platform, what Triple Crown always meant to me was a platform for what's next in our staff's mind or in my mind, now in my son and daughter's mind of what could be next. And sometimes the possibilities got me in trouble. That the platform was broad enough to go a lot of ways. Meaning I'm dealing with college women's basketball today. I'm dealing with the top club recruiting volleyball tournament today. I'm dealing with a facility that, by the way, Randy, you won't have seen another club facility like it when you come this summer.
I'm looking forward to it.
That is the unbelievable college level duplex, all completely smart wired, partnered with TrackMan, uh, AMT force plates in the lab, 24 motion
Really?
capture, marker and markerless cameras, TrackMan wired in there, Edgertronics for picture finish, the things that we'll do with our teams to run them through that lab. So the platform allowed that to happen. A building next to a detention pond, which now you would never know is a detention pond because my mind's eye saw a stadium right outside the window of the office.
Wow. That's awesome. When you talk about the platform, obviously the platform also, and you just kind of went into it a little bit, but it took you into, coaching fast pitch. Tell me about your TC teams and how that's going, and how you've been able to spin that off and keep those separate, because I think you do a good job of it's, you're Dave King, you run these events, but you also coach this team. How are you able to do that?
Well, I think the model was always about one, as I wanted to be around coaching kids, and in fact, I like coaching anybody,
Hmm.
kids, my peers, whether it's handling this. So coaching is always going to be a part of what I do. Um, I think the model had to work. I could see early on that I had an unfair advantage to talent. And so, how would I position us? And I was always a David and Goliath kind of guy, which meant could I round up a bunch of local kids and scare you guys, scare the guys that rounded up kids from 12 hours and give them some grief, which means we really had to coach. We had to teach and we had to coach. And, I get kids here that have a long, it's not that they have such a high ceiling, it's just they're so far down that the ceiling looks high to coach them to that level. So the challenge all the time is to last night I have a girl that throws a drop ball that just gets socked. I mean, I don't care where we play. So the challenge is, can we convert this long arm girl to a rise baller, and her pitching instructor to deal with it. And so to me the model is a lot of fun to tinker with. The temptation, I've never recruited a kid to come to a tryout ever. And so if you showed up here, it's because you wanted to get trained and coached. So I think I'm positioned in such a way that if I go to some other people's events, it's obvious that they're probably going to be 1 through 5. If I get into 1 through 5, I've earned it in any of our events with our teams. And so the other model was I wanted to develop young ladies as coaches, and that's been a bigger challenge for me because I went 20 years with all the coaches on the field being women, and then the last 5 I have a challenge with the time commitments to get the women I want to coach. So I would say positioning ourselves as, it's not that we're a non-threat, but I'm guessing that every time you play us, you feel like he didn't load up and get the Gatorade player from here and the Gatorade player from there, and he could have, but he didn't.
Yeah.
And so those are local kids that he coached up, and I think there's people like you that respect that and say, damn it, I know what it took for him to get there. I don't have a tryout where the 120 best kids in SoCal show up and I pick 15 of them to be on my elite roster. I'm proud of the fact that I've had, I'm now on my 7th SEC pitcher. I mean, and one of them got early recruited, and they've all been successful. So that to me was always the target, was take a bunch of kids and coach them up. And so to me that fits. And then the other thing it always does, it makes me relevant of what's going on out there. I mean, I have to put them on the road. I have to stay in a hotel. I got to run through some policies. I got to go to the good events and the bad events. I got to go through qualifying or not qualifying, or invited or not invited, power pooled or not. And so I feel the pains of the leverage of our sport. And that makes the decisions in this building very relevant. The minute you're going to be at Kansas City or Los Angeles or down in Myrtle Beach or Atlanta or in Texas, and you're looking at what they're going through, we're still relevant in our mind because we're still doing the same things that our core team's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you said it too, because, obviously we know you always have a good team. But I do know that about you. And that's why I asked the question, because it has to be tempting for you as a competitive person to go, I've got some data on some kids. I have some phone numbers. It's not that hard to, maybe you don't reach out personally. Obviously, that's kind of would seal the deal for some. But like, I could have so and so reach out, and I've never felt that you do that, and I've never felt that you've positioned your team to any type of advantage in any of your events when we play there.
I would
And
say there's an argument from time to time because of our cycles as coaching that we belong or don't belong in the power pool. Okay, so that's one of the things. Now, having stayed ranked up until last year in the top 50 uh, warrants us. But other than that, and then they would come ask me, do you belong in the TV bracket? And said, no, we don't. Even if we've got the numbers, give the spot to somebody else. We're not that team this year from that standpoint. So I think from the team standpoint, it allows me, it's a platform that allows me personally to do some things, but it allows our company to, we've got a ball field outside, we practice on it, we've got test equipment, we're testing this TrackMan or this force plate or this camera. We're going with this with Rapsodo. We're starting to see how the market's evolving on data, on video, on all those things from a true bird's eye view, which is we're in it. We're looking at it as a customer saying, is this going to happen? Or are we wasting our time? Is it still drive by? I mean, we run the largest drive by in the world, and that bothers me. You know, I
What do you
would
mean by that? What do you mean by
a
largest
drive
drive by?
by is a bunch of guys in their cars driving up and down the street looking at things and people looking at them. And at the end of the day, our girls don't know whether someone liked their car. And
Right.
so that always bugged me. Meaning I want them to get more feedback. How do I get the feedback of all these college coaches watching the parade go in front of them and whether they like their car or not? And so
Yeah.
that's bugged me forever. Meaning I can put more at the backstop. I can create more touches. We can figure out a nighttime event for this seniors and the smarty pants kids and the kids that just want to go JUCO and the transfer portal kids. We can create all these moments, but we still at the end of the day don't have a report card for that kid that said somebody liked them and this is what they liked about them. And so that's probably a question I'll die literally trying to solve better, which is, and then I see this parent evolution, which has happened to everybody because of travel ball, and we're the demon here. Because of travel ball, we've taken away these parents' lives. They don't hunt and fish. They don't go rock climbing. They follow their kids around, and when they get to 15 or 16, they make statements like, "I put so much money in, and I'm Scott Boras. I represent this player." That they don't let the kids have the experience. The kids are the same. Their kids are not different. They want
Right.
strong leadership to be worked hard and walk away with some self-esteem and some teammates. And if
Yep.
college happens, it happens. I don't see a kid being a lick different. But what I see is a bunch of parents whose lives are different than the parents of the kids, my kids. Meaning I didn't quit doing what I was doing so my kids could play travel ball. And so now they've quit doing what they're doing and they're hanging around and they're causing some they're causing some things to happen, anxieties to happen in that mom's this vested, dad's this vested. They don't have a life, meaning they just want me to. So I wish they'd get a life and let me figure out if I belong in the game. And
Yeah.
so I told my parents at the parent meeting, if you come to more than half the games, I'm going to be mad at you. Because I need you to get a life before they leave. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't know what to do with who you are as parents after these kids leave. Because you think that is all your life is on the weekends. And so the message that parents are given to kids because of their total investment is a dangerous message. So I watched this happen over and over. And I hand a lot of really good kids off that are not a problem, but their parents need to hop and jump and skip to places that don't teach and build self-esteem in order to get a little more playing time or a little more of this because that's what the parent thought. And so
Right.
I wrestle with the parent model right now really hard.
Yeah. That's a really interesting thing because obviously the mental health piece is always out there. And I saw something recently that asked, there was something on one of the platforms that said, what are bigger organizations doing for mental health? I mean, and that's a good point that, the pressures that they get from home because mom and dad are giving up their weekends and spending a lot of money. Maybe we need to start there. Maybe it needs to start with, like you said, the parents getting a life and doing something else and not putting that pressure on those kids.
I don't know how to address it any other way, but the ability to handle anxiety is based on your own ability to personally meet challenges and struggles, your own, without
Right.
an orange slide or a hug or a mom calling saying they're not feeling good. It's the ability to know you're resilient enough. And the parent blocks the pain and suffering that's needed early on to build a healthy human. I remember when I was 18 years old, my parents were both educators, and and they wanted nothing more for me. I was a very good student in high school. Go on to X, Y, or Z. And I put a backpack on and went to India. And my dad thought, that's awesome. You're going to learn some stuff that a guy can't learn at 17. I was 17. And my mom was like, this is horrible. You're going to get mugged and you're going to get buried behind a rock somewhere. But what it did for me to handle those struggles as a person is why I'm here today. They let me fail a little bit. They let me go around the world. And so when I look at parents today, they're so engaged that they are the anxiety, not their kids. Their kids go through a few struggles, get knocked down, have to pick themselves back up. Their parents say, we got you. We're behind you, but you figure it out. But right. I find that we're in a different world. And then the parents saying, hey, this is my avocation. I'm 40. This is what I do for a living. I go to work, make enough money to go haul Betsy around America. And I'm vested. I had a parent tell me in an email that because I cut the check, I will be talking to you. And I said, well, you're probably going to be talking to a new coach then. Because I talk to young ladies who want to understand. The girl was a Division I recruit, one tool. Had 3 or 4 things that she needed to really get buttoned up before she went on. And they didn't like the answers of how tough I was on building those other tools. The girl was fine, but their interview at home at night was not fine. Meaning, he's tough on you. You damn right I'm tough on you. I hand off kids ready to play ball and people ready to tackle life, and I don't need you intercepting them. And so the mental health piece of the anxiety that's created by them. And then the social media one is real, which means if they can't get their parents' orange slice, then they go to social media and pick. And so I've thrown 3 girls off the team this year for picking on social media. If we're going to be a social media team, you're going to go play. I'll give you a list of teams that like that. And so, I'm still a little radical on my platform, Randy, but I don't coach for a school and I'm not in the college system. I run a program a certain way, and you're either going to hand your kid off here and let me bootstrap them up and love them up. I mean, there's not a kid that doesn't know it's very, very tough. Love, 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 love. Sure. So I struggle with the parents' evolution, not the kids' evolution.
Yeah. The parents are saying one thing, hey, I need my kid to, learn these life lessons, but they never, when they fall, they never let them hit the ground. Like they catch them, they hold them up. So they never learn how to fail. They never learn how to get back up. Like to what you said, they never learn how to be resilient.
And in spite of that, I still got 80% great kids, in spite of that. But that's a dilemma that I'm not prepared to handle as coaching parents. And so now I've said this year, I will start coaching parents. And I have 2 meetings now for just parents. How to get a life's one of them. And then rules of behavior is another, the boundaries, which is the minute you show up at the backstop and I see any action from you in coaching, then your kid will come out and they'll either decide to go tell you to move your butt to left field, or they won't come back on the field.
Yeah. You haven't let me know when you put that Zoom call out. We might have a few people attend that.
Okay.
Tell me about your performance lab. You kind of touched on it a little bit. You said TrackMan, fully wired, force plates. Sounds awesome.
So almost all businesses are pivots. So you'd be as good example, meaning you didn't get to a podcast 5 years ago from a decision you made. It pivoted you there. And so when this dilemma of how to fit kids, it was massive. Meaning I started down the path and I got these data and these indicators and norms. Then I realized that I had a college retreat where I brought in the top college coaches and I showed them the numbers. And then the second day, one of them said, Dave, we don't know what they mean. We don't even have those numbers on our kids. And I said, would you be willing to, I didn't say it. One of them said, would you be willing to test us? I said, that's a dream come true. So then I started testing the colleges and realized that they didn't have player selection data of any substance. And if they did get some data, they didn't know what it meant. And so it led me down the highway of saying, how can I move colleges first to move high school kids second? Which, Nate Walker and I talk a lot about the evolution of data for decisions. So 3 years ago, when I started working with Nate, we were talking about 5 to 7 schools that could use uh, sensor data to adjust pitching assignments and game data to enhance it.
What kind of
And
sensor data? What kind of sensor data?
so, the sensor data so if you take, there's 3 kinds of data in a live game, which is ball in, ball out, movement of players. And so if you say ball in, the pitchers have this much critical impact. Ball in becomes the lowest hanging fruit to change. In other words, what's the difference between a vertical drop of 6 and one of 8? Can the naked eye could see it? What is the graded curve of 62 with 6 or 60 with 8? What's better with vertical drop of 8? And then what's the best paired and stacked component? Meaning, what's the most deceptive pair of pitches together? Is it a vertical with a horizontal? Is it vertical up with vertical down? Is it a speed stack? So all these things began to be the questions of pitching. And the sensor was saying it. What the naked eye was telling you on swings and miss, could the sensor and some video enhance that? And the answer was, it not only enhanced it, it changed it.
Yeah.
And so now and I don't want to be this hard on colleges, but if they were in the room with me, they'd know I'd be just this direct. So right now there's 60 of 1,700 colleges that have their hands around any pitching data that has to do with sensor data. Now, I'm going to throw out video scouting and 643, and I'm going to work on just this sensor data, how the ball moves from the pitcher's hand and how it moves in that. And so right now, 15 of them can interpret it and with help, and 5 to 7 of them can interpret it with some limited consulting. So if you took MLB and said, right now an MLB team has 25 to 30 scouts and 25 to 30 data analysts, which take sensor data and game data and begin to look at efficiencies or opportunities in it. And so as I started down the path of measuring high school kids on measurables, I realized that we were doing CAT scans, but we didn't have anybody could read them. There's one guy at the Mayo Clinic that could read the damn thing. And we couldn't all go to the Mayo Clinic. And so it was a dilemma that was not really easily solvable without start. So now I'm on my 3rd retreat. I've had 22 or 23 Power 5 coaches, different ones, and their staffs come to talk about the evolution of data and video in the Big 5. And when I say the Big 5, not by position, not by run scoring, not by defense, but by player selection, then by those things, by player development, then by those things, then by game management, then by those things, then by workload management, then by those things, and then by mental competitive fitness, and then by those things. So the Big 5 have a lot of data opportunity in them. So I started to look at the best practices of people that would help me. And Major League Baseball is a closed system. So the Diamondbacks aren't sharing. In fact, the only way the Diamondbacks share with the Astros is the Astros steal their guy.
Right.
That's sharing. And so we couldn't be stealing everybody's guy from Major League Baseball. So we started down the path of picking colleges in baseball and in softball that were far enough along that were okay at leading an industry out. And so the best data schools are the 2 that stand out right now in utilization of data. There's 3 are Florida State, Texas A&M, and University of Oklahoma. And then there's a handful of others right on their tail. And this won't stop. I mean, it's going to be an arms race to figure out utilization of data, whether it's sensor data, scrape data, or video data, or correlation between the sets for all those things. So when I got far enough along, I realized we were struggling a little bit with who people thought we were. Are those the guys that, test your first base or round the bases, your arm strength, all things that we could test. And then they got Rapsoda and they got some exit velo, all things that we could take. And so when we got there, I realized that probably I need to step our game up and build a lab. And so just happened to walk into University of Arkansas in Tennessee and start looking on the baseball side. And when I went and uncovered where they got influenced, I got all the way to Wake Forest. And when I got to Wake Forest, I realized that they had probably the most progressive lab in baseball, which meant that what was causing the things on the sensors to really get sexy and be good numbers. And it was happening because of a clinical approach. Meaning Wake Forest Hospital combined with Virginia Tech was testing pitchers on rehab assignment. And I met with the people there and said, show me what you do, talk to me. And all the way to where we're at today, the lead gal there is on our board of directors. And so we mirrored some things she was doing for Wake Forest baseball lab, which was to be able to start taking the cause into the effect of the ball movement. What is the body doing on the force plates? What do the motion capture cameras say as they surround the athlete? What does the ball flight out the in say? And what does the Edgertronic high speed say the fingers were doing to affect it? And we put it in an environment that's brand new and we built it. And then we said, next to it, we're going to take two fields and we're going to smart wire those fields with video and ball flight, which meant partnering. And believe me, when you get here and see this place, you're going to say, that's a lot of connection. That's a lot of connectivity and conduit and fiber and think tanks and where it goes and how it ends. But we're in early stages of this lab. I see our lab being for people trying to make the national team, for high-end pitchers on the move, for interpretation of the best young ladies in America for signing, Canadian national team scheduled to be here, junior national team, 40 top club teams will be run through it as part of the tournament before the fourth. So the lab is something that was in my head to solve this problem not once and for all, to be part of the solution to identifying better ways to develop and identify and to manage young athletes, to manage their workload, to manage high-end athletes, which meant we had to jump in all the way. So when you get here to look at it, Randy, you're going to say, who else has got it? And I'd say, well, in pitching, force plate wise, you got a portable system that's a little in SoCal. You've got an attempt with University of Auburn. Virginia Tech's got Josh Johnson on it and making the move. You've got the kinesthesis and the kinematic labs at schools that might lend today to look at, but you don't have a dedicated lab to pitching anywhere in the world other than Australia. And so in the United States, it will be the only dedicated embedded force plate lab, completely set up with motion cap and everything for that. And then we have a mirror MLB hitting lab that can go baseball or softball. And so it has the markered camera on the bat, markerless on the body. Motion capture gives you a 3D and a skeletal assignment of the athlete as they move through timestamp, force, along with the output of the ball. So it's probably, in a podcast like this, I'm sure I lost me and everybody else. But it's a commitment to what data means to make better decisions or better insights to get efficiencies for the athlete and eventually the team.
Right. When you talk about efficiencies in the end data, you're also looking at, those fine tune adjustments that can be made to a kid to help them perform at a higher level to give them more opportunities. It's funny because it must have been 2016 or 17. Victor Hambrick. He's got a Yeah, he does a great job, and we've been doing this for since 2015 or 16 or 17, and we brought out Rapsodo. We tried to do that, and I think sometimes I feel it was just still a little bit early. And so when you say that you've lost people, um, I think that they're going to hear some of those words. They're just going to start to hear more and more of that in the future. So they may have heard them early. They may have, there's some people that never heard of a force plate. There were people that never heard of Rapsodo or TrackMan or even Blast Motion for that matter, which is another thing that we did. I think back in 2019 or 2020. But I just felt like it was early, and I think the more, to your point, that colleges start utilizing this data and understand what to do with it, I think it's only going to further the game. I was at a game this past summer, and it was the coolest thing ever. I basically was getting a hitting lesson from JT Gasso, and we were talking about different body positions, the pelvic position, all those things that I know that you can see and actually measure in your lab. But before he walked off, he said, "Hey, do me a favor, get me all of your pitchers' Rapsodo reports." And there's not a lot of coaches that are going to ask for that stuff.
There's another one I should have thrown in the group, which is Mike White at Texas, because he's cutting edge on a lot of stuff too. But so the big debate in our building was how far do we go? And of course, my son and daughter are the commitment to it, and the finance behind it is the rest of the company's performance. And so betting on the future, when would the future come to where college coaches, basically 40% of them, are ready to accept data as a way to make a better decision? And so I believed it's 2030. Nate Walker, who is very proficient, believes 2027. But anyway, that's 36 months if he's right, and 60 to 72 if I'm right, to where it looks like MLB. Because the evolution of MLB was Moneyball, scrape data first, which is there a better application to scrape data? Can we find things in scrape data people are doing that are more efficient uses of our dollars for buying players? And then you
Dave,
have
what
the
is scrape
evolution.
data?
Yeah, scrape data means I take public data and I just recalculate it. So we have the portal, we do the transfer portal rankings, and we scrape data and put it into our own algorithms with our analysts. And those analysts then rate the top players coming into the portal. And I would tell you, you can take last year's portal ranking and you tell me if I'm wrong. 11 of the top 15 are just rocking the ship in the NCAA. You take it on the weighted runs above average scrape data that we put in the modeling, and you'll find that those transfer portal kids are contributing at a very high level. So scrape data means to take the NCAA data that's public facing and relook at it, put it in. In order to do the transfer portal, here's an example. We had to capture all the data of every pitch in the NCAA, which is public facing. And then we had to rate every kid in the NCAA by position based on a model. Then we had to pick them out as they stepped forward. Said, hey, I'm in the portal, and re-rank. Oh, that's the number one kid in the portal right now based on data sets. So that's scrape data. Moneyball was about the evolution that on-base percentage was low-hanging fruit that nobody was getting, and people that were on base more, and then OPS evolved, mattered. And then StatCast came and said, and that was public facing. They put that on for better watching of the World Series. It wasn't because teams were using censored ball flight data saying that's a better pitch stack. That's a better movement profile to go like this. They did it from the standpoint that it would make the broadcaster's life, they'd give them more stuff. And then people start to scrape that. And then the next evolution in MLB was to the managers of data, which meant they changed how teams were run. And so 28 of 32 right now have business degrees that run major league teams, which means the application of data to enhance their decisions. And now it's even swung all the way back in MLB to where there's more weight put in. Now that we have all the data and two people look alike in data, who's got eyes on? Where it used to be, we've got eyes on, show me a little data to separate these two. They don't even start now without data and video as the pre-separators. So I see us following MLB. The timeline is it Nate Walker's answer 3 years? Is it our answer 6 years?
So Nate Walker says 2030. You guys say 2027.
No,
What is
we're
that
the other way
based on?
around. We say 2030 because we're struggling with he's struggling with the application of pitching as a sensor and data-driven discipline. We're working on pitching, run scoring, workload management, defensive management, mental fitness as a data platform to manage an entire organization. We're saying that adoption will be 2030. Pitching may move faster. So pitching decisions, a 62-mile-an-hour kid right now doesn't meet a Power 5 baseline. But with an 11-inch drop, they do. With a 14-inch spread in a stack, they do. In fact, they're dominating. So even knowing those things is really important for coaches to be able to place their kids at the next level. This kid will be successful. They have a very good opportunity of surviving at a high level.
Wow. It's funny because it seems like all this stuff starts in, from what I've learned, it starts in golf, motion capture, data capture, all this stuff starts in golf. Then it goes to MLB, and then it's just natural that it comes to, the college, and then and now the travel ball world. Man, yeah, no, I'm really excited to get to see this place. So you said you're doing your CSC events, obviously, and you get a lot of that stuff. But is the lab separate in terms of accessibility?
Yeah, it can be booked individually. We're still trying to figure out who best fits in it. But during our Power 5 event, so Patriot Games and Power 5 run together before the 4th. And it's just high-end teams in more of a measurable environment. It'd just be power pools and nothing else between all three tournaments. And they're running a precursor event, good or bad, indifferent. We stepped into the space because our lab is the answer. Our lab fields are the answer to run 50 teams through here and have them get live data off the facility and then lab data off their pitching. And so that, to me, I can't come up with a better branding moment. 70 or 80 Division I coaches in here seeing the application of data, how it fits, how the lab works, watching kids in the lab, seeing screens on it, getting printouts after the tournament's done. My gut says that I'll have 10 to 15% could read a report. And they could find a sexy number, but they couldn't read a heat map plus a vertical stack or a horizontal stack or a speed stack map on a pitcher. The heat map being where the strikes went. They couldn't read the rest. So if you take like Synergy, so every college game now is mapped on Synergy if you're in the system. And Synergy coupled with 643, where the ball went and what it did. I'll apply, and those get tagged and logged by people that may or may not know the game after the fact. That film comes in post-game, whether it's Czechoslovakia or the United States, but somebody's tagging in the pitch. But what it does do is allow zonal management with some kind of movement profile to allow coaches to, and a result, to allow coaches to match up their assignments this weekend to handle the evolution of hitters. And vice versa, to take a hitting lineup and say, we got an outside drop baller 70% of the time, surprise inside. Our lineup's now got these three girls in it, and those three girls aren't because they couldn't find a drop. This is a rise baller, so the minute we got her in, the zonal management, is she throws everything up and in. I got 3 kids couldn't find up and in tomorrow or the next day, so they're not going to get a lot of swings. So that's going on all the time right now. Meaning you can take
Wow.
synergy and 643 and you can break down the world. Now, how it got to that movement profile or got to that zone, how it moved and what its deception was, really hard to tell from just the video camera at the backstop. And so the next evolution is the sensor data overlaid with it. That had an 8-inch drop. Or no, that was 72 miles an hour, but it's only got a 2-inch drop. So if you got a kid that can turn on it, it's really not a nasty drop ball. It's just a hard fastball with a little heavy. And if she doesn't zonally manage it well, we'll hit her hard. And this is the kids in the rough. So you're seeing that early evolution in management. Our consulting right now, we have 15 colleges under consulting contracts where we everything from analyze their pitchers to actually do a Russell Martin on their catchers, which we show them whether they showed the umpire anything in the outside the frame in the 2-inch radius that got called, or whether the only things that ever got called were truly 2 inches up in the frame, and how that really matters. 2-1 versus 1-2 changes the game if pitchers are throwing to 2-1 and 1-2. So, there's all kinds of moments that are happening here, how to help them build their lineup based on what I would call data and video.
Wow. What is exactly does synergy do? I've heard of 643, but what does synergy do?
Synergy is for lack of a better description, it's a membership agreement where I agree to put my video on the platform. We'll shoot it a certain way from a certain distance. We'll put it on the platform, and I can access anybody else from the platform's video. And the agreement says we got to put up all our games. And the agreement says all the people on there got to put up all their games. And so it's pretty unilateral in D1 right now. I would say 220 of 300 schools have synergy applied right now of managed. And then 643 goes with it to say what was the outcome of the ball. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you, there's more to both of them than that, but it allows a tremendous amount of pre-game scouting. And so when colleges don't have that, they're walking into a disadvantaged world in that the other team actually has a zonal preparation for their hitters or a zonal preparation for their pitchers.
Yeah, at minimum, right? And so just so I understand it clearly, so Synergy is just the platform that you upload your video. Is there certain cameras or a certain frame rate or anything like that?
There's
Or there certain
parameters
angles?
that they want to see, they want to work with, but you're going to see that happen at the higher end club system fairly soon, to where we have an agreement to put Synergy out there. The AGL model to launch was an attempt to go deeper, but let's just go shallower and say all we wanted was the video from this plate angle. And then we wanted the outcomes, and we wanted to be able to scout off of it. Our issues in club ball is that if we have the wrong schedule, we have 40 unusable games in 60. Meaning we have 20 games that have value, meaning they're matchups that matter. The statistical scrapes matter. So to have the game data and scrape it matters. The video matters. And so the evolution of that world will come. So the NCAA teams are further along in Synergy plus 643 and early stages on sensor application, whether it's Yakkertech in their stadium or now the evolution of the potential of TrackMan coming on board through our beta testing, because TrackMan is the largest platform out there for baseball, meaning, 3/4 of every player signed in MLB is signed through TrackMan data plus video, then watch. And TrackMan data that's captured, tagged, and logged in the Dominican or Venezuela or Colombia or Taiwan, meaning that data is essentially the starter kit. I had a young
Yeah.
lady that worked for us here, Sammy Williams, that was a first team All American during COVID and wrote code, one of the best code writers around. And she went on to write tremendous code for us on capture. So, capture and presentation, I get this data and I present it back to the owner of the data, things that matter to him. Well, she did a brilliant job for us. Well, we tried to get her at the end as she graduated, but then the Cubs got her as their number 2 person in capture, meaning they'll pull all these sources of data files in and video file, store them, and begin to see efficiencies in the data sets.
Yep. It's funny. My wife asked me last night at dinner. She says, "If you could have a superpower, what would it be?" And I said, I would love to be able to look at data and be able to extract the important pieces out of it." Exactly what you just said.
Well, I challenge our staff all the time is I use the rule of 7. Give me 7 pieces of data in that would matter to me. And then I'll tell you what don't matter, you replace them until we have 7 I can use. And so when we got done doing the NCAA data, the irony of this whole thing is I like 3 in hitting and 4 in pitching. The other way around, I like 3 in pitching and 4 in hitting that were NCAA scrape data points. And I like sensor data 4 and 3, meaning they were indicators that said this was a good kid. And, I use data with my own filter to pick a team to play internationally once a year. And I play the national teams, the U.S. team, the Japanese, the Canadians, all the Olympic teams, rolled up teams. And I pick that next group of kids that didn't make a U.S. tryout system. And my pride and joy right now is that 6 of the kids that were outside the U.S. system played well enough against the U.S. and others at that level that they're now in the U.S. system. And they were blue collar kids that were rolled up on data and a values filter. And you probably tell from the early part of the podcast, wouldn't do well if you say, "Coach, when do we eat? And what do you got for me?" If you do well if you said, "Where do we line up and I'll play anywhere." I mean, I don't do well with entitled kids, so I do a lot of background work on, is this a blue collar kid that just eats and drinks on this platform a ball, or is this somebody that I gotta hand them this, that, or the other? And so when the kids go play with me, they say, "Where'd you round up these kids?" And I said, "I spent a long time on your data, and then I spend a long time on your values." And I went all the way through who coached you. And when I find somebody that's entitled, I throw it over my shoulder. I mean, I want to coach kids that look like and feel like what I care about. And so I use data filters, meaning you're not going to play for me if you don't have a FIP that's down in the low ones and a conversion to ERA. A FIP is independent of anything the fielders did. It's the same as ERA, but suck out anytime the fielders touch it. So it's got strikeouts, walks, home runs, hit batsmen. But the minute it's hit in play and the fielder could catch it, it's eliminated because that's still got an element of luck that's plus or minus half a point in data. I mean, an ERA can move a half a point with great fielders and go the other way. I gave you an example in the portal. People would call me on Ashley Miller, and I'd say, "You might ought to look at the year before when she had a left side, because her FIP was off. Her FIP both years have been pretty steady, but her ERA hasn't. She had a 1 and she went to a mid-3. And she's a very good portal kid off FIP because the fielders they had on that team last year didn't go get the balls hit in the 5-6 or the 4-6 or the 3-4 holes. They just didn't. Right. So I use a lot of these filters to find kids. And then I begin to do my work on what I want in a model. How do I want a model to, 2 years ago it was to beat the U.S. and we got them twice. Then they beat us in the championship. They're better coaches and they have better players. But our players were really friggin' good, and some of them belonged on their roster and ended up on. And then last year, Japanese just friggin' better than us. I mean, they beat us in the championship. We out hit them and they beat us 4-0. They had 2 hits. And just got out coached, Randy. I mean, they're just better.
Well, I know what that feels like. So, um, really quick, didn't you have Mariah Lopez with you?
Yes. And so she fit
Yeah.
into what I call lefty soup, which is one of your kids, meaning how do I so if you take a pitching stack and you separate it and say, I want a vertical, I want a horizontal, and then I want somebody that just stays in this stack, and I want somebody that just stays in the lower stack. And then I put them together. Now I have a stack of pitchers. And then sequencing pitchers is real important. So I use a lot of lefty soup modeling because it's unique and hasn't been seen. And her, Kirsten Deal, Cassidy Curd, and Courtney Coppersmith became lefty soup. And they, we in the championship game we went 5 no-hit innings until I mismanaged workload with 4 different pitchers, meaning I had Coppersmith worn down too much. So Mariah was capable of more in that game, and I didn't have her workload numbers. She's very good.
Yeah, she had a great time. I want to go back to the Patriot games and the Power 5 event really quick. Obviously the Patriot games came up last year, and then I saw that you guys are also going to put it on an event pre fireworks. Um, what does that look like?
Well, it's so for us and for them. Scott and I have talked, so we're on good terms from the standpoint that the college coaches are going to come and they'll go see their talent, and we've helped them land ball fields so to keep it in a radius. And so you're going to have 14s, 16s, and 18s, and you're going to have, I would say, the best way to conclude it would be that there's 40 good programs here that tend to attract Power Five, what used to be the old Power Five talent, and that the college coaches can pre-see some of those, not fly to another location, come here, park, stay a while, run their camps at the Fourth, stay over and watch all the kids they want to watch at the Fourth, and make it a different kind of week for very high-end coaches, not for the D2s, D3s. The 4th of July is still their deal. And so the format is, 5 games plus. Ours is 5 games. One of the games is live measurement, and another slot that's a lab slot. And so the lab slot means we'll run all their pitchers through a 10 pitch profile, all their hitters through a 10 swing profile, and then measure all their athleticism. Excuse me. And that'll go Thursday, Friday, Saturday before the 4th.
That sounds awesome. You, I do have a question. I've always called it fireworks. Some people call it sparkler. Tell me and you call it the 4th. Is that just an easier way to say both, or is there a difference? I mean, that was one of the questions I was really curious about.
Well, you need to go back to when we started, and so I helped start the second gyration. I wasn't in the first gyration of fireworks.
Okay.
Stremmel had that. It was in Boulder. The history on it said he got mad at the Boulder Club in Boulder and moved to Roar-built Olympic Park. Thus he sat, and then Boulder died. It didn't run for 2 or 3 years, and the California boys didn't really enjoy the non-Boulder experience, their Aurora Flats, and said to the Boulder Club, will you go again? And that's the evolution. Gotcha. So now I'm running an event that's called the Mountain Magic. And so 92, teams start in Steamboat, play Fort Collins, end up in Boulder. 10 days. Beautiful. Excuse me. And then Stremmel splits and causes this chaos. I keep running before, but we're not synced up. And so the evolution was we get to 2001. My daughter gets me coaching in 98 in fast pitch instead of boys baseball. And by 2001, I want to play in the 4th. Well, Stremmel won't take me, and Jacobson won't take me. We're not good enough. So we started the Sparkler in 2002, and the event had a lot of teams that couldn't get in either, and we didn't do a great job of it, but we fixed everything within 3 years. The Sparkler started drawing, top teams who wanted another choice. And we had a great facility in Christopher.
Yeah.
And then we evolved it to a point where we acquired the fireworks, Stremmel's old event, after he had sold it to somebody else, and we bought it back. And then we started running them with the fireworks having this block of teams, mostly all high end, and us having a group of high end teams, and then mostly the on the come teams.
Gotcha.
And then eventually we started marrying the brackets, the power pools and teams, because it made no sense for us. And so when we first started, the Westminster was the playoff between those two teams, TV night. Then it was the best two ranked teams either place. And then we had the TV bracket. So it's easier for us to say now, I mean, I'll have some of my teams play in the Sparkler because that's where they fit more in the kind of coaches will be in front of them. So it's more D2 coach system in it. But it's all part of the fourth, and they're all part of the big family of events.
Sure.
So,
yeah, no, I was wondering that because I just call it fireworks, and I call it. I'll just start calling it the fourth or the spark fire.
the Spark
I think that's
Fire.
what the website
We
says.
tried a lot of names, but we all just started calling it the Colorado
Yeah.
Fourth, and so it just became that internally.
Okay. And not to jump around too much, but I did have a question, and I didn't get to it because I went off track. But what when it comes to your Power Five event and the Patriot games, are you testing any teams from Patriot, or are you only doing teams from Power Five?
Well, obviously, the Patriot has their own test environment at the Legends bubble, and so whatever they test with Rapsoda or Yakkertech or whatever their partnership model is, they're going to test.
Okay.
We're testing our teams through the format. My guess is college coaches go back and forth. We have club coach hospitality night here on our super deck. We have this amazing super deck that it's kind of like being at Coors Field, fourth floor, with a bar concept and food.
Mm.
It overlooks both of our competitive diamonds, and it has the data feeds right up to it.
Wow.
So you'll be able to get game data as it comes off. So right now we can't handle more than 50, and he can't handle more than 60. And so you divide that up, that's 110 teams in 3 age groups. That's 30, 40 clubs in each and
Yeah.
represented. So it was designed that, and we'll catch more grief over it than we probably should, but it was designed to measure out of our lab. Ours was.
Okay. Well, I definitely can't wait to come see it, and hopefully, just to kind of put a bug in your ear, I've got some good young pitchers that I would love for them to see, because I think it's important that everyone start to understand that there's more to this whole thing than just going to your lesson, and those are all great, but we've been big on let's get an idea of what you need to work on, and let's get an idea of what your ball's doing, or like you said, how much separation you're creating, or and those things. But I think it's a good idea, or it would be a good way for them to see where this game is going with the parents, the players, and even our coaches. So,
yeah, I agree that the knowledge will help us all make decisions that, if you got a kid with one pitch kid that they either got to be 66 or 12 inches of drop, and to make a significant Division I school, then those are the numbers from them. Those are their game numbers and their environmental numbers. And so then you don't have a kid bugging you, and how do you get 12 inches? Well, 2 6s is 12, guys. 6 up and
Right.
6 down, or 8 down and 4
Right.
up. It's still 12 inches. Do you tunnel them? And is it deceptive?
Right.
It look the
Right.
same? Because if it's a different tunnel, it's not the
Right.
same. So, yeah, there's a lot of this has been to help me deal with the parent of the kid that has an exit velo right at 80, but doesn't know the first thing about first base, can't run the bases, can't catch and throw, and is on my butt about me mishandling her, and me saying, that right there, one-dimensional, means that you got to have this kind of exit velo in games that matter, and they've got to be squared up exit velo in games that matter. Yeah. And so that's about all we can do for you because right now we can't show you off this way.
Right. Let's pivot really quick to your PV challenge. Um, how did that come about? Years ago, you invited me out. Regretted every day not attending every year. I'm sure you know I coach high school, or you may not know, but I coach high school ball. So that's the first day of tryouts. But the day I'm not coaching, I'm heading that way because it looks like a great event. Tell me a little bit about how it started and um,
Well, it's ball 30 years ago. It's the old awning over the ball field that was at the county fair that we all grew up running around the yard, getting paid for picking foul balls and dogs and kids and the community out there. And so it reminds me of my childhood.
hmm,
It reminds a lot of college coaches of their childhood. Now, they won't tolerate the ball fields we played on in their childhood for their college team.
right.
So I got to get the infield dialed in and the outfield. But I love affair with Port Vallarta. Started running events there in 1990 in baseball and then slow pitch softball. I built a facility as a donation to the city with the city down there. Just a year at a time, we added to it and have never quit. And it's so old school. It just it just hugs you.
Yeah.
And college coaches eventually. I drag and run the grounds crew and handle the grief committees, and so last year I have 8 of the top 25 right now played that are in right now this year, not last year, this
Yeah.
year. So Oklahoma, Clemson, are there. You got Mississippi State, South Carolina. You walk down the lines of those teams, Washington, Duke, and so they all want and like that experience. We designed it to where the ball field, the hotel that we partner with, they take their bat bags and they walk across the street to the ballpark.
Oh wow.
So they never get on a bus again. And so I tell them, you're going to be at Resort Land, looks like America, on that side of the street, and you're going to walk into Mexico on this side, and you love them both.
Yeah.
Uh, so I do it. I have a house nearby that I built out that I stay in and keep club coaches that want to join me to kind of watch it while I do the tournament. And it's an annual event now. It has 2 weeks. I can handle 5 teams every year. I get 7 or 8 booked, and so then I got to stay up till 1 in the morning and start too early and play too late. But it's designed for 5 or 6 teams a week, and just American counter games, and I love it.
Seems to be growing the sport. Obviously, going down there. What? How's your Spanish?
It would. The Spanish people are embarrassed that I'm still there. The American people are convinced I can talk to
Gotcha.
them. So you can put whatever you want in the middle. When I talk to the people that work for me, they know what we want, and I know what they want.
Yeah.
When I talk to people at dinner that are the locals, David, you've got to get better. So
I got to imagine the relationships that you've created, not only with these college coaches and the programs that go down to your facilities and the players and playing your event, but just the locals has got to be something that you look forward to.
yeah, they're the guy that works at the ball field for me all year long is an old White Sox guy a Mexican guy that just stayed in Puerto Vallarta the rest of his life, married a local gal. His daughter played for me. We coached together in the U.S. for 5 years. She runs the house and the water and the toilets at the ballpark, and he runs the ball field with me. And then his buddy is my number 2, and his left fielder off his men's team's my number 3. And then there's always a roving number 4 on tamping the. So yeah, the relationships are precious.
That's awesome. And it's just one field, right? Do I understand?
One field, and then we use the baseball field to warm up.
Yeah.
We built cages and bullpens on the facility, so that's good. But it's a one field, and I love a one field tournament.
Yeah, you got.
You come to the 4th, we got 166. Here we got 1.
Unbelievable. That's quite the contrast. What's next for the sport? I think you might have already said it. I mean, you took me down a path that I knew that you were, back when you started CSC or you were the early stages. I remember seeing you at the fourth, and you pulled me aside and showed me some stuff and walked me through it. And I thought the last I heard you were going to retire. And it doesn't seem like that's happened. And I saw an excitement in your eye, and I can hear it in your voice that you were super excited about it. So it sounds like that's the next piece. Is there anything else that you see that's next for this sport?
I can't envision where the club system went, the world went, but it professionalized, but it's not professional yet. So
Yeah.
that would be what I'd say to all you guys. It's professionalized, but I deal with volleyball. Volleyball is professionalized and it's professionally run. So the challenge would be some of you are there and some of you aren't yet.
Yeah. And what would you mean by that? Look, how could we do that?
Oh, it's from everything from development of your coaches to how you pay your bills to what you give the customers, the clients, to what your training facilities look like, and the evolution of that will. I mean, we're going to follow Europe, and so people will say, "What do you mean by that?" And I said, Europe runs a predominantly club system, and so if you're in a club at 10, you could play with their pro franchise when you're 18 or 19 or 20 because their Division 7 teams, you're 12 and under. And their Division 4 teams, you're 14 and under. And their Division 2 teams, ladies, they're not quite good enough to play on one. So the evolution of club systems based on the professionalism will be eventually people that are focused on club sports will go
Yeah.
in that direction. So the professionalism of club system will get better for the customer. It will eliminate some, but it will challenge you guys to be inclusive. The evolution of what happens at the NCAA is real. I believe if the 40 schools or 50 schools or 60 schools that are left in professional sports in NCAA run, then I segment them and say 240 are going to run sports because it matters to the university. Might be downsized a little bit, but it'll still be great sports. These 60 over here will be professionalized. I think softball gets kept in their mix. The rest of the sports jump the other side of the curtain. Professionalized means you'll have collective bargaining agreement, minimum pay, gender equity, because they want to stay student institutions. All these evolutions will happen. Football will go rogue, but have to pull the rest with them. And so, how all of us deal with putting people in that pay for play system is going to be different. I don't think you'll see NIL go wild on us other than handpicking pitchers for a while. I signed 11 NIL players the day it broke. 7 days in, I went and got 11 to see how it would work. And I would tell you that the guys that were dealt with, I won't ever sign them again. The gals know how to promote, help you earn their keep, whatever. And so it was a tremendous experience for us. But it's now part of the school. They're collective. They round up the money. I mean, the first player last night, I said, I want to put you on an NIL. And she said, well, let me go back to the school and find out what the collective's rules are. And I said, no, young lady, that's not how this was designed. It was designed for you to be independent. Did you sign away all your marketing rights to the school again?
Right.
Because that is exactly what this lawsuit was about.
Yeah.
So you're going to have this evolution, which will freak all kinds of people. But let's look at it this way: of 1,700 schools playing softball, 60 will be in one system, and 1,640 will be pretty much how we know them. They may have a different championship. The FBS and the FCS work.
Yeah.
Envision that's probably the professionalism of college sports. So I see that evolution. I see the evolution of the professional club. I see this parent deal as being rogue that has to be handled.
Yeah.
In Europe, if I went to a European club, 7 kids would get off a bus at different times and go to the workout. Then they get back on the bus and go home. Then I go to one of their games, and three parents that'd be there and the community would be watching them that were fans of the sport. But their parents didn't define their life as being their kids'.
Right.
And I don't know that that's good, but I know that that's where the European club system is. This is what my kid elects to do.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that's who I am. It means that's who my kid is.
When you said you signed kids to NLIs, what did you mean by that?
So, name, image, and likeness contract is the ability to pay a college athlete some money to do stuff for you. So, you take, for instance, Hannah Gamble, one of the early ones I signed at Arkansas. She then has to post things and do things on the internet for
Gotcha.
me. And
For Triple Crown.
or Addison Barnard from Wichita State, or Sidney McKinney from Wichita State. As you go through those kids and you look at their evolution, they every month they do something for us in our brands, either posts or they come to events and sign autographs, or they come to events and measure, or they share their measurements with other kids. But we sign them and renew them every year if they do their part. So it's been good for me to know what is happening on the name, image, and likeness front.
Yeah, I've actually had conversations with people about, does that start bleeding into what we're doing? And you kind of already see, a lot of clubs, I'm sure, when you have a few that, you hear that they don't pay dues, or, they're funded through their other teams or their younger teams. Everybody at some points, got a pitcher that's, on some sort of stipend or scholarship. So I didn't know what you meant by that. I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, will it penetrate youth system? And I would say it did a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point.
There have been people making special dispensation for talent for a long time. Will players now, is there going to be a Saban moment where the coach says, I don't want to coach anymore? And for those guys, he picked college versus pro. He was a good pro coach.
Mm-hmm.
But he wanted to coach a student athlete that he knew the highway, 10 were going down this highway and 80 were going down this highway, and he's preparing people for life.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to do a pro system without a pro model, without, a contract signing person, someone that would trade their ass if they didn't,
Right.
all the things that come with that.
Right.
He didn't want to manage that system and where he's at in life. And so.
You talking about Saban?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I was going to ask you about that. How can us as travel ball coaches, how can the travel ball parents out there help Triple Crown run better events? What can they do? What's their part?
What, I don't know that the parent, I think the club coach and the player are the closest to the beat of it. The parent is an accessory. It's like a little kid that had to go. They're like the little kid you brought with you that had to watch the big brother play.
Mm-hmm.
These ones then elect to make it a choice and come. And so everything we do has to be about inclusion for who's coming. And so for the parents to help us, I just think that every moment that we hear them is real. The cost model is out of whack, or is it? That's the thing. In other words, I'm going to spend X on a grandkid for fixing a Y, and the one that stayed in the other X at $5,000-6,000 a year, I don't fix the Y. So is it an investment going forward that way? So the cost modeling for all of us versus the value as parents is where we get in trouble. I'd say willingly buy it, put the clothes on their back, and see if they take to it. If they take to it, then do what you can to move them forward in the system.
Yeah.
Great example is I got a girl named Bailey Isaac that played for me. Came from Wyoming, didn't know the game very well, but man, tiger. I work hard to find a school at her academic level, off the charts, smart, and her desire level and where she was at so her game could grow up. And I couldn't be happier than to see her fit at Grinnell, and her parents were Grinnell College. I haven't heard of it. I said, well, look at their alums, and you're going to find 5 or 6 Fortune 500 companies come out of Grinnell.
Wow.
She's in good hands. So when I see her Grinnell picture, I'm happy that she's at Grinnell College. So to parents that are willing to be behind the scenes and help when a kid gets caught up in the love of the game. But the other way, I'd just say, I'd say to parents is get out of the way, and if they want you to tag along, then do all you can, but don't manage it. Don't manage it. You're not Scott Boras. We don't want you. They don't want you.
Yeah.
They just want your love and unconditional support. Period.
So funny. I've had on more than one occasion. I'm sure you've had this too, but I've had kids, text me or see me at practice and go, "Coach, I'm sorry. Did my dad call you or did my mom call you? I'm so sorry." To your point, they don't want that. They want
I know
they want to
parents
advocate
know
for
when their
themselves.
kid's miserable with our roster. But I want the kid to come in and I want our coaches to recognize they're miserable and call a meeting and say, "You look miserable."
Yeah.
But I don't want that to be a parent process. I want the kid to grow up in our 14 and older rosters and say, I don't know if I'm supposed to be out here.
Yeah.
I would rather it come from there. I'm not happy,
Yeah.
And I told this kid the other day, I said, my job is not to ever make you happy. It's to work you so hard that your self-esteem moves and you're fulfilled.
Right.
But I'll never get to happy. Now, I would tell you that we're going to be at some games where you get excited and we get happy.
You might smile.
But it'll be because you've worked hard and we're fulfilled.
Right.
So happy is a byproduct of some fun. But I'm not here to get you happy. I'm here to help your self-esteem so you can tackle the world.
Love it. Dave, any final thoughts before we close this out? Anything you want to say to a player or coaches or even event directors out there? Is there anything
I would say the evolution of club coaches is really promising to me. The idiot patrol that copied baseball that said I got to kick something on the umpire and get their attention, and I got to do it every third game, and it's just diminishing. And so we have respectful coaches of each other, and that'll lead to players respect each other. And so I commend what's happening there. That the evolution for me is the move to professional coaches that are civil and likable and enjoyable. Event directors will always, that's a tough job. And I envy you and I try to help you all we can. Our events answer a little bit of the equation, but your events answer the rest. So keep running them.
Cool. Well, Dave, it's been great, man. I really
And
appreciate you taking the time. I think this is 6th guest. So I appreciate you, putting a little trust in
thanks
me.
for inviting me and thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
I admire you for tackling this. I did 22 of these during COVID. And my content was always the surveys and then interviewing 5 or 6 club coaches that would be able to tell me what they really were seeing on the ground. And so it was enlightening for me to hear other people's take on the world we were in then.
Yeah.
And so the need for you to do this non-COVID, we're not in a crisis and we're not trying to get on the ballpark right now, but we're trying to help a game. I admire you for what you're doing.
Thanks,
so
Dave.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. It's funny you mentioned that because one of the things I remembered during COVID was those meetings that you were holding, and back then it was just streaming. The next step was, okay, how do we stream games so we can get kids seen during COVID? But I remember your meetings and just thinking to myself, like, man, I mean, I had no idea what it took to even do what you did. And that's when I really started to realize, like, this is big. This game that we're in, this profession that we're in is big. And it's not just a hobby for a lot of us. So,
And I admire anybody that decides to become a professional.
yeah.
Because the minute you become a professional, you move our market. The hobbyists, I love having them, and we need every volunteer that walks out there, every coach, everybody else. But the professionals that say, I'm going to go figure out a way my career goes from here to next are the people that I need to help.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. So I just want to say thanks for listening to everyone out there. We will continue working to elevate the sport and get caught up with those who are influential in the fast pitch community, and hopefully we can help you navigate your journey. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Caught Up with Randy Kaye, or handle at Coach KAZ, and you can follow both handles at Coach KAZ on Instagram and Twitter. Dave, thanks again. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm watching the rise, and I wouldn't say I'm shocked, cause I'm hardly surprised.